The rain in Seoul didn't just fall. It felt like it was trying to erase the city. It hammered against the asphalt, turning the neon lights of Gangnam into blurry streaks of purple and electric blue. Standing on a curb, soaked to the bone, was a man named Chinedu. He was barefoot, his expensive suit ruined, his hair plastered to his forehead. He looked pathetic. He was screaming, his voice cracking over the roar of the thunder. Amara, Amara, look at me. You can't do this. He's dangerous. He's a killer. But the woman he was screaming at didn't look back. Amara stood under the shelter of a massive black umbrella, held by a man who looked like he owned the darkness itself. She was dry. She was calm. And she was devastatingly beautiful in an emerald green silk dress that clung to her curves like a second skin. She looked at the man holding the umbrella, Kang Tae-oh, the head of the Seven Dragons Syndicate. He didn't even acknowledge the screaming husband a few yards away. His cold, sharp eyes were fixed solely on Amara, waiting for her command. The car is warm, Tae-oh said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the humid air. He opened the back door of the black Rolls-Royce Phantom. Amara hesitated for a fraction of a second. She could hear Chinedu sobbing now, begging. She remembered the day she married him in Lagos, the promise of a life together in Korea. Then she remembered what he had said to her exactly 24 hours ago. The disrespect. The audacity. She stepped into the car. Tae-oh followed her, the heavy door thudding shut with a sound that felt like a gavel hitting a judge's bench. The world outside, the rain, the noise, the regret, was instantly silenced. As the car pulled away, leaving her husband kneeling in the gutter, Amara didn't feel fear. She felt the cold leather of the seat, the warmth of the man beside her, and the terrifying thrill of power. But to understand how a loyal Nigerian wife ended up in the back seat of a mafia boss car, we have to rewind the clock. We have to go back to the moment the perfect picture cracked. It was 7 p.m. on a Tuesday. The apartment in Mapogu was quiet, smelling faintly of thyme, curry, and the expensive diffuser Chinedu insisted on keeping in the hallway. Amara was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of jollof rice. She was humming a soft tune, her hips swaying slightly. She was a woman who tried to find joy in the small things because the big things had been disappointing her for a while now. The digital lock on the front door beeped. Click, click, whir. Chinedu walked in. He didn't announce himself. He threw his briefcase on the minimalist white sofa and loosened his tie. He looked annoyed. He always looked annoyed these days, as if the mere existence of his life in Seoul was an inconvenience. Welcome home, baby, Amara called out, her voice warm. Dinner is almost ready. I made the goat meat stew you like, was all he said. He didn't come into the kitchen to kiss her. He didn't ask about her day. He walked straight to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and sat at the dining table, scrolling through his phone. Amara felt that familiar sting in her chest, the feeling of being invisible in her own home. She plated the food, arranging it beautifully, and set it down in front of him. She sat opposite him, watching him eat. How is it? She asked. It's fine, he said, not looking up from his screen. He was typing a message, a small smile playing on his lips. Chinedu, she said softly. He sighed, putting the phone down face up. What? Can I just eat in peace, Amara? I've been speaking Korean all day to incompetent suppliers. My brain is tired. We haven't spoken in 3 days, she said, keeping her tone light. I just want to know if we are okay. Chinedu stopped chewing. He looked at her then. It wasn't a look of love. It was the look of a man assessing a piece of furniture he was bored with. He wiped his mouth with a napkin and leaned back. Actually, he said, his voice taking on a strange, confident edge. I'm glad you asked. Because we need to talk. Amara put her fork down. The air in the room seemed to drop a few degrees. Okay, I'm listening. I've been thinking about us, Chinedu began, crossing his arms. About this marriage. We've been here for 3 years. And honestly, it feels stagnant. Stagnant? Amara repeated. I manage the house. I supported you when you quit your job to start this consultancy. I learned the language so I could help you negotiate your contracts. How is that stagnant? Not that stuff. He waved his hand dismissively. I mean, the spark. The excitement. Look, Amara, you're a great woman. You're a good wife. But let's be honest. You're very domestic. Safe. Amara blinked. Safe? Yes. And am a man in his prime, living in one of the most exciting cities in the world. I have needs. I have curiosity. I feel like I'm suffocating here, eating the same stew, having the same conversations, sleeping with the same woman. He said it so casually, as if he were discussing the weather. Were you saying Chinedu? Amara asked, her voice barely a whisper. I want an open marriage, he said. He smiled, as if he was offering her a gift. I want the freedom to explore, to date other people. And you can too, of course. Though, let's be real, you're not exactly the type to go out clubbing in Gangnam, are you? He laughed, a short, dry chuckle. It was the sound of a man who thought he held all the cards. You think I'm boring, Amara stated. It wasn't a question. I think you're comfortable, he corrected, but his eyes said boring. I think this will be good for us. It will take the pressure off. I can go out, have my fun, and come home to you. You don't have to worry about being exciting anymore. You can just be you. Amara stared at him. She looked at the man she had moved across the world for. She saw his arrogance. She saw his selfishness. But mostly, she saw that he didn't know her at all. He saw a housewife. He had forgotten that before she was his wife, she was Amara. The woman who ran art galleries in Lagos. The woman who negotiated deals with sharks. The woman who had fire in her blood. She didn't cry. Tears were for people who had hope. She had none left for him. Okay, Amara said. Chinedu's eyes widened. Really? You agree? If that is what you want, she said, standing up and picking up his empty plate. I want you to be happy, Chinedu. If you need other women to feel like a man, then you should have them. He missed the insult wrapped in her agreement. He jumped up, beaming. Babe, you are the best. Seriously, you won't regret this. It's going to make our marriage so much stronger. He checked his watch. Look, the boys are meeting at a lounge in Itaewon. I was going to skip it, but since we are celebrating this new arrangement, do you mind if I go? Go, Amara said, her back to him as she loaded the dishwasher. Don't let me keep you. You're an angel. He kissed her cheek, a wet, distracted peck, and rushed to the bedroom to change. 10 minutes later, he was gone, smelling of expensive cologne and desperation. Amara stood in the silent apartment. She heard the elevator ding down the hall. She walked to the window and watched him get into a taxi. He was texting someone, probably the excitement he was looking for. Okay, she whispered to the empty room. Open marriage. Let's see who can open the widest door. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have protected you, hit that like button right now. Because Amara is about to show Chinedu that when you let a woman like her off the leash, she doesn't just walk away, she hunts. Amara went to the guest room. She pulled a small key from behind a painting on the wall and unlocked the closet. Inside sat a vintage trunk she hadn't opened since she arrived in Seoul. She popped the latches. The smell of her old life wafted out. Expensive perfume, potential, and power. She pushed aside the sensible sweaters and cotton dresses Chinedu liked. She reached to the bottom and pulled out a garment bag. Inside was a dress she had bought in Paris years ago. Emerald green silk. Backless. A neckline that plunged dangerously low and a slit that went up to her hip. It was a dress for a woman who wanted to start a war. She stripped off her house clothes. She went into the bathroom and applied her makeup with the precision of a soldier applying war paint. Dark, smoky eyes. Blood red lip. She oiled her dark skin until it gleamed like polished mahogany. She put on the gold jewelry her grandmother gave her, heavy, intricate pieces that looked like armor. She slipped into the dress. She looked in a mirror. The good wife was gone. In her place stood a queen in exile, ready to retake her throne. She grabbed her clutch, ensuring her passport and her secret emergency credit card were inside. She walked out of the apartment, leaving the lights on and the dirty dishes in the sink. She hailed a premium black taxi. The driver looked at her in the rearview mirror, his eyes widening at the sight of this stunning foreign woman glowing in the back seat. Where to Agassi? Gangnam, Amara said, her voice dropping an octave. Take me to the vault. The driver hesitated. The vault? Ma'am, that is a private members club. Very exclusive. Very. Dangerous types go there. Did I ask for a review? Amara asked coolly. Just drive. 40 minutes later, the car pulled up into a dark alleyway behind a nondescript building. There was no sign, just a heavy steel door and two massive Korean men in black suits standing guard. Amara stepped out of the car. The humidity of the night made her skin glisten. She walked up to the door, her gold heels clicking rhythmically on the concrete. Click, click, click. The larger guard stepped forward, blocking her path. He crossed his arms, looking down at her with a sneer. No tourists, he grunted in broken English. Private party. Go away. Amara didn't flinch. She looked him up and down, then switched to fluent, perfect Korean. I am not a tourist, she said, her accent flawless. And unless you want to explain to manager Kim why you turned away a high-stakes player with cash to burn, I suggest you step aside. The guard's sneer vanished, replaced by shock. He looked at her dress. He looked at the gold around her neck. He looked at the fire in her eyes. He tapped his earpiece, muttered something, and listened. A moment later, he stepped back and opened the door. Apologies, madam. Please. Amara walked in. The air inside was cool and smelled of cedarwood, whiskey, and money. The lighting was dim, casting long shadows across the velvet furniture. This was the vault. It was the playground of the Jeomryong, the Golden Dragons. Politicians, chaebol heirs, and mobsters mingled here. Amara walked straight to the cashier cage. She pulled out her card. 10 million won in chips, she commanded. Then a whiskey. Neat. She took her chips and walked to the center of the room. She ignored the stares. She ignored the whispers. She sat down at a poker table where 3 men were playing. Deal me in, she said. The dealer looked at the pit boss. The pit boss nodded. For the next hour, Amara played with a vengeance. She played aggressively. She bluffed. She erased. She watched the men at the table sweat. They weren't used to a woman playing like this. They certainly weren't used to a Nigerian woman reading their tells like a picture book. All in, she said, pushing a tower of chips into the center. The man across from her, a sweating businessman, folded his hand in frustration. Who is this woman? He muttered. Amara raked in the pot. She was up $20,000. She felt alive. She felt powerful. But then the room went quiet. It wasn't a sudden silence. It was a ripple effect. Conversation stopped. Glasses were set down softly. The air in the room grew heavy. Amara looked up. Standing on the balcony overlooking the casino floor was a man. He was dressed in a black suit, no tie, the top buttons of his shirt undone to reveal the edge of a tattoo on his chest. He was smoking a cigarette, his movements slow and deliberate. He was looking directly at her. He didn't look away when she caught his eye. He stared at her with an intensity that made the hair on her arms stand up. It was Kang Tae-oh, the boss. The man everyone in Seoul whispered about but never saw. He crushed his cigarette out and walked down the stairs. The crowd parted for him like water. He didn't look at anyone else. He walked straight to Amara's table. The other players at the table scrambled to stand up, bowing deeply. Mr. Kang, one of them stammered. Leave, Tae-oh said. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. The men grabbed their chips and fled. The dealer stood up to leave too, but Tae-oh raised a hand. Stay. Deal. Tae-oh pulled out the chair opposite Amara and sat down. Up close, he was even more terrifying. He had a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. His hands were large, elegant, and dangerous. You are causing a disturbance in my club, he said. His eyes were dark, endless pools. I'm just playing cards, Amara replied, leaning back in her chair, swirling her whiskey. She refused to bow. She refused to look down. Is winning against the rules, Mr. Kang? A flicker of surprise crossed his face. He wasn't used to people meeting his gaze. Winning is allowed. Hustling my guests. That is a gray area. If they are bad at math, that's not my problem, she said. He stared at her for a long moment. Then the corner of his mouth twitched upward. They almost smiled. You are not from here. I live in Mapo, she said. That is not what I mean, he said, his voice dropping lower. You have a fire in you that this city usually extinguishes. Who are you? I'm Amara, she said, and I'm having a very interesting night. He looked at her hand resting on the table. He looked at the ring finger. No ring, but you have the mark of one. A recent separation? An open arrangement, Amara corrected. As of 3 hours ago. Open, Tae-oh repeated the word, tasting it. He leaned forward. That implies your husband is willing to share you. He must be a fool. Amara's breath hitched. He thinks he's the one who needs freedom. Then he is blind, Tae-oh said. He signaled the dealer. One hand. 5-card draw. No limits. What are the stakes? Amara asked. Tae-oh looked at the pile of chips in front of her. Not money. Money is boring. If you win, you take the house vault for the night. $100,000. And if you win? Amara asked, her heart pounding against her ribs. Tae-oh's eyes darkened. He looked at her lips, then back to her eyes. If I win, I get your time. 24 hours. You do what I say. You go where I go. You belong to me. The room spun slightly. This was crazy. This was dangerous. This was exactly what Chinedu would never do. Chinedu wanted a safe, boring wife. This man wanted to own a storm. Deal, Amara whispered. The dealer's hand shook as he dealt the cards. Snap, snap, snap. Amara picked up her hand. She fanned the cards out. Ace of Hearts, King of Hearts, Queen of Hearts, Jack of Hearts, 10 of Hearts. A royal flush. It was impossible. It was magic. She had the unbeatable hand. She had won $100,000. She could walk out of here rich and independent. She looked up at Tae-oh. He wasn't looking at his cards. He was looking at her face. He was waiting. He looked calm, as if he didn't care about the outcome, only about the game. Amara looked at the exit. Then she looked at the man. She thought about her empty apartment. She thought about Chinedu's smug face. She thought about being safe. She made a decision. I fold, she said. The dealer gasped. Tae-oh's eyes narrowed. He reached across the table and flipped her cards over. The royal flush lay there, gleaming under the chandelier light. Silence stretched between them. You had the winning hand, Tae-oh said softly. Why did you fold? Amara leaned forward, her face inches from his. Because I didn't come here for the money, Mr. Kang. Tae-oh stared at her. For the first time, he looked genuinely stunned. Then the shock melted into something else. Something hotter. Something possessive. He stood up, towering over the table. He extended his hand to her. Then come, he said. Collection starts now. Amara placed her hand in his. His grip was iron. As he pulled her up, she knew there was no going back. She had just sold her soul to the devil, and she couldn't wait to see what hell looked like. Listen, if your heart is racing right now, you need to subscribe to the channel, because what happens in the penthouse in the next part? You are not ready for it. Turn on those notifications because the game has just begun. The elevator ride up to the penthouse was silent, but it was the kind of silence that screamed. The air inside the small mirrored box felt thin, consumed entirely by the man standing next to her. Amara stared straight ahead at the reflection of the brass doors, watching the floor numbers climb. 50, 51, 52. She could feel him. She could feel the heat radiating off his body through the expensive fabric of his suit. He hadn't let go of her hand. His grip was loose now, not painful, but absolute. It was a statement, you are with me. Tae-oh didn't look at the numbers. He was looking at her reflection in the doors. She saw him studying her, the curve of her neck, the pulse jumping frantically in her throat, the way her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. You are shaking, he observed. His voice was low, barely audible over the hum of the elevator. In cold, Amara lit. Tae-oh turned his head slowly. He stepped closer, invading her personal space until the toes of his polished shoes touched the tips of her gold heels. He reached out with his free hand and brushed a knuckle against her cheek. Liar, he whispered. You are not cold. You are terrified. And if I am? Amara turned to face him, her chin tilting up. She refused to back down, even though every instinct in her body screamed danger. Is that part of the game? Fear is honest, Tae-oh said. His thumb traced her lower lip, dragging it down slightly. I like honest. Your husband. He made you lie. He made you pretend you were happy. The mention of Chinedu felt like a slap. Amara flinched. We aren't talking about him. We are, Tae-oh corrected. The elevator chimed softly as it reached the top floor. Because I need to know the name of the man who was stupid enough to let you walk out the door looking like this. The doors slid open. They didn't step into a hallway. They stepped directly into a sanctuary. The penthouse was cavernous. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls looked out over the entire glittering sprawl of Seoul. The Han River cut through the city like a ribbon of black ink. The furniture was dark leather and chrome, sparse but obscenely expensive. The only light came from the city below and a low, warm lamp in the corner. Tae-oh walked her into the room and let go of her hand. The loss of contact made Amara stumble slightly, as if her gravity had just shifted. He walked to a crystal decanter on a sidebar and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. "Drink," he said, turning back and extending a glass to her. Amara took it. Her hands were steady now. She took a sip. It was scotch, smooth, smoky, and burning going down. It settled in her stomach like a hot stone. "Why?" he asked. He was leaning against the heavy oak desk, loosening his cufflinks. Snap, snap. He pulled them off and dropped them onto the wood. "Why what?" Amara asked, walking toward the window. The rain was lashing against the glass, blurring the city lights. "Why did you fold?" Tae-oh asked. "You had the royal flush. You could have walked away with $50,000. You could have bought a ticket back to wherever you are from." "Nigeria," Amara said. "Lagos." "Lagos," he repeated. The words sounded exotic and heavy on his tongue. "You could have gone home." Amara laughed, a short, bitter sound. She turned from the window to face him. "Home? My home was supposed to be here. I built a home here. I learned your language. I learned your customs. I cooked your food. And tonight, my husband told me it wasn't enough. He told me I was boring. He told me he needed variety." Tae-oh's eyes narrowed. He stopped unbuttoning his shirt. "He said you were boring?" "He said he wanted an open marriage," Amara continued, the whiskey loosening the knot in her chest. "He wanted permission to sleep with other women because he feels stifled. So I gave it to him." She took another step toward Tae-oh. "I gave him his open marriage. And then I walked out and found the most dangerous man in the city. Because if he wants to play games, I want to play to win." Tae-oh stared at her. For a moment, the mask of the Mafia Boss slipped, and she saw something else, anger. Cold, hard anger. Not at her, but for her. He set his glass down. He crossed the room in 3 long strides. He didn't stop until he was looming over her, blocking out the light, blocking out the world. "He is a child," Tae-oh growled. "He plays with fire because he has never been burned." He reached out and took the glass from her hand, setting it on a side table without looking away from her eyes. "You want revenge," he stated. "I want to feel something," Amara whispered. "I want to feel like I exist. For 3 years, I have been invisible. I have been the good wife. I want to be that." Tae-oh's hands came up to cup her face. His thumbs stroked her cheekbones. The contrast was stark, his pale, tattooed hands against her rich, dark skin. It was a visual masterpiece, and he knew it. He looked at her like she was a rare artifact he had just stolen. "You are not bad, Amara," he murmured, his face inches from hers. "You are starving." He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't the polite, routine kiss of a husband checking a box. It was a collision. It was possessive, demanding, and utterly overwhelming. His mouth crushed against hers, tasting of scotch and smoke. He groaned low in his throat, a sound of hunger that vibrated against her lips. Amara gasped, her hands flying up to grip his shoulders. The silk of his shirt was cool, but the muscle underneath was hard as rock. She dug her fingers in, pulling him closer. He walked her backward until her legs hit the edge of the leather sofa. She sat down heavily, and he followed, his body pressing her into the cushions. "You belong to me for 24 hours, he whispered against her neck, his lips trailing fire down to her collarbone. That was the deal. I know, Amara breathless. No, he bit lightly at the sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder, making her arch her back. You do not know. You think this is just sex. You think this is just getting back at him. He pulled back to look at her. His eyes were blown wide, the pupils swallowing the iris. I am going to ruin you for him, Tae-oh promised. When I am done with you, You will never be able to look at that weak little man again without feeling sick. I'm going to set the bar so high he will need a ladder just to see the bottom of it. If that line didn't send shivers down your spine, I don't know what will. If you're rooting for Tae-oh to fix what Chinedu broke, smash that like button right now. Let's show the algorithm that we love a man who knows what he wants. He stood up and pulled her to her feet. He turned her around so she was facing the window, her back to his chest. He swept her heavy hair to one side, exposing the zipper of the green dress. This dress, he murmured, his fingers tracing the line of her spine. It is a weapon. I wore it for him, Amara confessed quietly. I was going to wear it to dinner next week. To surprise him. He doesn't deserve the surprise, Tae-oh said. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, he pulled the zipper down. The sound was a loud zip in the quiet room. The cool air of the penthouse hit her skin, followed immediately by the heat of his hands. The silk pooled at her feet. She stood there in her lace lingerie, looking at her own reflection in the glass, a dark silhouette against the city lights, held by a shadow. Tae-oh didn't rush. That was the most erotic part. Chinedu always rushed. Chinedu treated intimacy like a chore to be completed before sleeping. Tae-oh treated it like a ceremony. He stripped off his shirt, tossing it aside. His torso was a canvas of ink, dragons, waves, flowers, rippling over lean muscle. He picked her up, literally swept her off her feet as if she weighed nothing. Amara wrapped her legs around his waist, burying her face in the crook of his neck, inhaling him. Sandalwood, rain, and man. He carried her to the bedroom. The bed was massive, covered in sheets that felt like gray satin water. He laid her down. "Look at me," he commanded. The Rolls-Royce glided through the morning traffic of Seoul like a shark swimming through a school of minnows. The rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean and bright. Amara sat in the back, wearing a fresh set of clothes Tae-oh had miraculously produced, a sleek black pantsuit that fit her perfectly. She didn't ask how he had it. With men like Tae-oh, you didn't ask how. You just accepted. Tae-oh sat beside her, working on a tablet. He was back in his suit, looking every inch the CEO, but the dangerous energy was still there, humming under the surface. "We are here," the driver announced. Amara looked out the window. There it was, her apartment building. The gray concrete box where she had spent 3 years shrinking herself. "Are you ready?" Tae-oh asked, putting the tablet away. He took her hand. "He's going to be angry," Amara warned. "Chinedu has a temper." Tae-oh chuckled darkly. "He has a temper. Yobo, I have an army." He opened the door. They walked into the lobby. The security guard at the front desk, who usually ignored Amara, nearly fell out of his chair when he saw the entourage. Tae-oh, Amara, and 4 large men in black suits trailing behind them. They took the elevator up. The silence was different this time. It wasn't fearful. It was the calm before the storm. Ding. They walked down the hallway to apartment 4B. Amara reached for her keys, but the door was already unlocked. She pushed it open. The apartment was a mess. There were empty beer bottles on the table. Chinedu was sitting on the sofa, his head in his hands. He looked like he hadn't slept. He looked up as the door opened. His eyes were red and swollen. "Amara," he cried, jumping up. Relief washed over his face, followed instantly by rage. "Where the hell have you been? Do you know how worried I was? I called everyone. I thought you were dead." He rushed toward her, his hand raised as if to grab her arm. But he never reached her. One of Tae-oh's guards stepped forward, a wall of muscle blocking Chinedu's path. Chinedu slammed into the man's chest and bounced back, stumbling. "Who?" Chinedu stammered, looking at the guard, then at Amara. Then Tae-oh stepped into the room. The temperature in the apartment seemed to drop to absolute zero. Tae-oh didn't shout. He didn't look angry. He looked at the apartment with a sneer of disgust, as if he had stepped into a dirty public restroom. So Tae-oh said, his voice smooth and deadly, "This is the husband." Chinedu froze. He recognized him. Everyone in Seoul knew that face from the news, usually associated with words like alleged racketeering or untouchable. Mr. Kang," Chinedu whispered, his face draining of color. He looked from Tae-oh to Amara. "Amara? What? Why is the Nigerian boss in our living room?" Amara stepped forward. She didn't hide behind Tae-oh. She stood next to him. "He's not visiting Chinedu," Amara said, her voice steady. "He's helping me move." "Move?" Chinedu laughed nervously. "Babe, stop joking. Look, I know you're mad about the open marriage thing. I take it back, okay? It was a stupid idea. I was drunk. Let's just go back to normal." "Normal?" Amara shook her head. "Normal was me cooking for a man who didn't see me. Normal was me being boring. I'm done with normal. You can't leave me." Chinedu shouted, trying to regain control. "I brought you to this country. You are nothing without me here. Your visa, your status, it's all tied to me." Tae-oh laughed. It was a terrifying sound. He walked over to the minimalist coffee table, picked up a ceramic vase, looked at it with disdain, and dropped it. Crash. "Her status," Tae-oh said, stepping over the shards, "is no longer your concern. As for her visa, I have lawyers who can buy this building before lunch. Do you really want to talk about paperwork?" He stood toe-to-toe with Chinedu. Chinedu was tall, but Tae-oh was larger, not just in size, but in presence. "You asked for an open marriage," Tae-oh said softly. "You opened the door. She walked through it. And now she is with me. If you ever try to contact her again, if you ever come near her, if you even say her name in your sleep, I will remove your tongue. Do you understand?" Chinedu was trembling. He couldn't speak. He just nodded. Tae-oh turned to Amara. "Get your things. Only what matters. Leave the rest. I will buy you new things. Better things." Amara walked to the bedroom. She grabbed her passport. She grabbed the photo of her mother. She grabbed her jewelry box. She left the clothes. She left the wedding album. She left the ring on the nightstand. She walked back out. The living room was silent. Chinedu was slumped on the sofa, defeated. "I'm ready," Amara said. Tae-oh nodded. He offered her his arm. "Let's go home." "Home," Amara repeated. And for the first time in 3 years, the word felt real. She took his arm. They walked out of the apartment, leaving the door wide open behind them. We are almost at the end of this roller coaster, but the final scene, the final conversation in the car, it wraps everything up in the most satisfying way possible. You don't want to miss the ending. Keep listening. The hallway outside apartment 4B was quiet. It was the kind of silence that usually follows a bomb going off, the ringing in the ears, the dust settling, the realization that the landscape has been permanently altered. Amara walked down the corridor, her heels sinking into the cheap carpet, the sound muffled now. She didn't look back at the open door. She didn't look back at the man sobbing on the beige sofa. Tae-oh walked beside her. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. His presence wrapped around her like a force field, pushing the air out of the way. The 4 guards trailed behind them, a phalanx of black suits and stone faces, ensuring that the past couldn't reach out and grab her ankle. They stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut, cutting off the view of the hallway, cutting off the last 3 years of her life. Amara leaned back against the mirrored wall and let out a breath she felt like she had been holding since she arrived in Korea. Her hands were shaking again, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from adrenaline. It was the crash after the high. "You are shaking," Tae-oh said, not looking at her. He was watching the floor numbers descend. 4, 3, 2. "I just left my husband," Amara whispered. "I just walked out on my marriage with nothing but a handbag and a passport." Tae-oh turned his head slowly. "You left a cage," he corrected. "Do not confuse a cage with a home just because you have been living in it for a long time." The doors opened to the lobby. They walked out into the bright morning sunlight. The storm had fully passed. The sky was a piercing, impossible blue, the kind that hurts your eyes. The air smelled of wet pavement and exhaust fumes, but to Amara, it smelled like oxygen. The black Rolls-Royce was waiting at the curb, engine purring. The driver opened the back door. Amara slid in. Tae-oh followed. The door thudded shut, sealing them in the quiet, leather-scented cocoon. "Where to, sir?" the driver asked. Tae-oh looked at his watch. A heavy platinum timepiece that probably cost more than the apartment building they just left. "Drive," Tae-oh said. "Just drive along the river." The car pulled away. Amara watched the building recede in the rearview mirror until it was just a gray speck among thousands of other gray specks in Seoul. "So," Amara said, turning to face him. The space between them on the seat felt charged, electric. "The 24 hours are almost up." Tae-oh checked his watch again. "You have 45 minutes left." "And then what?" Amara asked. "Do you drop me off at a hotel? Do I go to the airport?" Tae-oh turned his body toward her. He rested his arm on the back of the seat behind her head, his fingers toying with a loose curl of her hair. His eyes were unreadable, dark pools that absorbed the light. "The deal was simple," he said slowly. "If I won, I owned you for 24 hours. After that, the debt is paid. You are free." "Free," Amara repeated. The word tasted strange. "To go where?" "Anywhere," Tae-oh said. "I can have a plane ready for you in an hour. You can go back to Lagos. You can go to Paris. You can go anywhere in the world where you don't have to be boring." He spat the word boring with such venom that Amara almost smiled. "Is that what you want?" Amara asked, searching his face. "You want me to leave?" Tae-oh stopped playing with her hair. His hand stilled. The air in the car grew thick. He leaned in closer, his face inches from hers. She could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. She could smell the soap on his skin, the faint scent of the scotch from the night before. "What I want," Tae-oh said, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper, "is irrelevant. The question is, Amara, what do you want? You have spent your life doing what your parents wanted, what your church wanted, what your husband wanted. For the first time in your life, the door is wide open. No debt, no obligations. What do you want?" Amara looked at him. She looked at the scar on his eyebrow. She looked at the dangerous set of his jaw. She thought about the way he had touched her, not just with lust, but with reverence. She thought about the way he had silenced the room when she walked in. She thought about Chinedu, small and pathetic on the sofa. "I don't want to be safe anymore," Amara whispered. "Safe is lonely." Tae-oh's eyes flared. He moved his hand from the seat to the back of her neck, his thumb tracing the pulse point under her jaw. "Then what do you want to be?" "I want to be dangerous," she said. "I want to be powerful. I want to be yours." A slow smile spread across Tae-oh's face. It wasn't the smirk of a gambler who just won a hand. It was the smile of a king who just crowned his queen. "Mine," he echoed. "Be careful, Amara. I do not do open relationships. If you stay, you are mine entirely. There is no going back. My world is not kind. It is violent. It is dark. And once you are in it, you never leave." "I'm not afraid of the dark," Amara said, leaning into his touch. "I've been living in the shadows for 3 years. At least in your darkness, I can see where I'm going." Tae-oh groaned, a low sound of victory, and pulled her into a kiss. This one was different from the night before. It wasn't frantic. It was a seal. It was a promise. It was deep, slow, and devastatingly intimate. When they broke apart, Tae-oh pulled a small velvet box from a jacket pocket. Amara's eyes widened. "What is that?" "I told you," Tae-oh said, popping the lid open. "I do not like to share. And I do not like bare fingers." Inside the box sat a ring. But it wasn't a diamond. It was an emerald, dark and deep green, surrounded by black diamonds set in platinum. It matched the dress she had worn. It matched the fire in her spirit. "I had a jeweler bring this to the penthouse while you were sleeping," Tae-oh admitted. "I knew you would fold the cards. I knew you would come with me. But I needed to know if you would stay. You were that confident." Amara laughed, breathless. "I am a gambler, Yobo," he said, taking her hand. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. It felt heavy. It felt real. "I only bet on sure things. And the moment I saw you walk into the vault with that look in your eyes, I knew I had already won." He kissed her hand, his lips lingering on the emerald. "Now," he said, sitting back and tapping the partition glass to signal the driver. "The 24 hours are up. So what happens now?" Amara asked, looking at the ring, looking at the city speeding by outside. Tae-oh smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes. "Now," he said, "we go to work. I have a meeting with the Busan Syndicate tonight. They have been difficult. I think they need to meet my new partner. She speaks excellent Korean, and she has a terrifying poker face." Amara smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached deep into her soul. She wasn't a housewife anymore. She wasn't an expat. She wasn't a burden. She was the boss collateral. And she was about to cash in. 3 months later, the charity gala at the Grand Hyatt Seoul was the event of the season. The ballroom was dripping in crystals, filled with a murmur of the city's elite. Politicians, CEOs, celebrities, everyone who mattered was there, including Chinedu. He stood near the buffet table, holding a glass of cheap champagne. He looked tired. His suit was wrinkled. He had lost weight, but not in a good way. The consultancy business had dried up after unforeseen complications with his visa and several major contracts suddenly being cancelled. He was currently working as an English tutor, barely making rent on a studio apartment in the outskirts of the city. He was scanning the room, hoping to network, hoping to find someone who could help him climb back up the ladder. Then the room went quiet. The double doors at the top of the grand staircase swung open. The flashbulbs went off like a lightning storm. Pulp, 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 pulp. Walking down the stairs was a couple that looked like they owned the oxygen everyone else was breathing. The man was Kang Tae-oh. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like armor. He looked lethal and elegant. But no one was looking at him. They were looking at the woman on his arm. She was wearing gold. A shimmering floor-length gown made of Nigerian lace and Korean silk, a fusion of cultures that was bold, regal, and stunning. Her hair was styled high, crowned with a gold headpiece. Her skin glowed. She looked 6 feet tall. Chinedu dropped his glass. It shattered on the marble floor, but no one noticed the sound because they were too busy whispering. That's the new director of the Obsidian Gallery. I heard she's the one who negotiated the Incheon port deal. She's magnificent. Amara walked down the stairs, her hand resting lightly on Tae-oh's arm. She scanned the room with a cool, practiced gaze. Her eyes swept over the crowd, the people who used to ignore her, the people who used to look through her. Then, her eyes landed on Chinedu. He was standing there, mouth open, surrounded by broken glass. Amara didn't stop. She didn't flinch. She simply looked at him. She looked at him with no anger, no sadness, no regret. She looked at him with absolute indifference. He was a stranger. He was a ghost. She leaned in and whispered something to Tae-oh. Tae-oh looked in Chinedu's direction. He didn't smile. He just nodded, a small acknowledgement of a bug he had already crushed. "Shall we dance, Yobo?" Tae-oh asked, his voice audible only to her. "We shall," Amara replied. They walked past Chinedu. Amara's dress brushed against his leg as she passed. She didn't look back. She stepped onto the dance floor, into the arms of the man who saw her, and she began to move. Chinedu stood there, watching her spin under the chandelier lights, realizing for the first time that the open marriage hadn't been a door for him to go out. It was a door for her to ascend. And that, my friends, is how you upgrade. Ladies, let this be a lesson. If a man tells you that you are boring or too safe, it's not because you are lacking. It's because he doesn't have the range to handle your excitement. Don't shrink yourself to fit into a small man's world. Find a big man who wants to build a galaxy with you. If you enjoyed this story, if you felt that satisfaction when she walked past him on the stairs, you have to hit that subscribe button. I have so many more stories like this, stories of revenge, romance, and the kind of love that burns the house down. Check out the next video on the screen right now. It's about a woman who finds out her billionaire boss is actually her childhood enemy. You don't want to miss it. Heartmelt stories, and I'll see you in the next story.